Out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of the band titled 530, because I recently spoke to Tara Milton, vocalist and bass player of the band, to find out more about life, love and poetry. This is the interview. We talk about, his time in 530, also what happens next and his moment with the nubiles, and much, much more. So this is the interview. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years. This is Tara talking about that period, and also just to say, I think there's one bit where there's a little bit of a gap. The volume or the recording slightly goes into a void, but apart from that, I think it's pretty good. Anyway, Tara, it's over to you.
Probably a series of musical awakenings. You know, because time is quite a strange concept up until, it is period, but particularly up until the age of until you're a teenager, you go through very definite periods of evolving, unfolding, as it were. So right from the age that you begin to remember your earliest musical experiences when you're a toddler and something's coming out of the radio and your very first awareness of what's that? It pleases me somehow. I have a different recollection for a different kind of phase. I guess when I was a toddler, I vividly recall a song on the radio, and I can't remember the artist's name now, but it was that "Where's Your Mama Gone? Where's Your Mama Gone?" And I remember. Can you remember the song?
God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Loved Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep,
That's
middle of the road. It was.
There you go. You're the anorak. Well, you have, but I related to that at the time because my mum used to go to work and leave me with a friend or neighbour who used to sort of babysit for us, and so that kind of struck a chord. You have that connection immediately. You know, this thing can relate to your personal experience. Okay, you won't necessarily verbalizing it to yourself in that kind of way. And then later, I can remember being in the back of our car. We used to live in Paul, Dorset, and Here Comes the Sun came on, and I was kind of. I was hypnotized by the beauty of it. You know, I just had no idea who it was or anything like that. There were a few, and then growing up, as you mentioned, the glam phase. Our family moved back to Oxfordshire, and we lived with my grandparents for a while. So my auntie Sally would have been in her maybe early teens or late pre-teens around that time. And she used to have friends come around, and they used to dance around the stereo to that T-Rex and Gary Glitter and that sort of stuff, Slade, and it was. And then my auntie was kind enough to set up the pots and pans in the formation of a drum kit and allow me to get a couple of the old the wooden spoons, like I was in with it, you know, in with the track.
Yes,
part of it. It really felt natural, you know. So those were the earliest ones.
The early years. My God, that sounds very good. Because interestingly enough, decades later, slightly jumping ahead of the wibbly wobbly timey wimey world, but there was that album that came out in the late 80s, the Anti-Poll Tax album, Elven Lives.
Oh yeah, That's right.
And funny enough, Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep features on that, and it was done by Lush, wasn't it?
Oh my Lord! You know what? You've newsed me up on that one. I know that my band was on there, but yeah,
you were 5:30 are on there, and
yeah,
can you even remember the song you did?
we did. Yeah, we did. My Sweet Lord,
You
and
did.
likewise, that's another recognition of those early awakenings of music, because that was another track that really jumped out of the stereo and embraced me when I was a kid. Yeah.
Yes, God, that was funny when you mentioned Chirpy, because obviously,
My apologies to Lush on that. I like Lush as well.
yes, absolutely. But
Yeah.
yes, if only you'd covered it on that album, it would have been a holistic kind of meeting.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Lush probably did better than we could have. I'm sure.
It was interesting because I know this writer, Will Hodgkinson, he did a book really celebrating a lot of the 70s songs that, I suppose are referred to as being slightly naff or not very cool rather than the usual. And I suppose he sort of references a lot of the songs that appear on that compilation. Like you got the Sidleys doing Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes. And
is that also on there as well?
Yes, Kung Fu Fighting. Kung Fu Fighting by Robin Hitchcock's on there. Bye Bye Baby by the Pop Guns. You got sort of, I suppose, Bohemian Rhapsody done by Cud. And Wandering.
Oh, wow.
And Wandering Star done by the Perfect Disaster. So
oh, wow. Yeah, I need to reinvestigate that record.
Yes, if you've got it in your sort of collection, go and see Elvin Lives and Leaves and hear your version of My Sweet Lord. So
yeah,
it was a classic really of its time. So yes, so then that was the early 70s, your period. So you were obviously sort of
sorry to interrupt. What did Julian Cope do? Because I remember we did a show and he was headlining at the Brixton Fridge, but can you remember if he lent a track to the record?
No, he's not on the album. There's 12 tracks, including the 14 Ice Bears, the Close Lobsters, the Wedding Presents, Corn Dollies, and yes, 5:30 with My Sweet Lord, which is obviously, but
yeah, it was my idea to do the song, I recall, and we recorded it at EMI Music Publishers just off Oxford Street, the northern end. I don't know if you know it, Rathbone Place. And yeah, we just kind of dashed it out in a couple of takes, and I think there was a bit of a race for the vocal, and Paul got into the studio early the next morning and did the vocal, which was probably a good thing actually, because his voice is more melodic than mine. So
yes, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So then going back to the 70s period, so were your parents at all? I mean, you mentioned playing sort of middle of the road. Did they have other sort of musical kind of albums that you were influenced by?
Parents and grandparents, stepfather as well. Another one I should probably mention was the Jungle Book records, which my grandmother gave us one Christmas. All those classic songs from the Jungle Book. That was quite an amazing one. My mother was a big Beatles fan. She was. I mean, she'd grown up in the 60s, was a teenager in the 60s. So, and likewise, my father was a few years older, so he was more into the rock and roll end of things.
Yes.
But having said that, he really did embrace each decade that came along. I mean, I remember my dad playing me Thriller, for example, first time I sat down and actually played it in the car when we were on a journey.
Yes. So during the 70s then, you were, I sort of not quite aware of your age, but you didn't, you didn't have that punk period, did you? You were a bit too young for punk?
Yes, I'm a bit young. Going back to punk really more as a retrospective kind of thing, but kids my age were into it, maybe a year or two older. My brother was kind of really into it, the Dead Kennedys and stuff like that. And I thought it was a little bit, a little bit wild. My tastes were a little bit more conservative at the time. I was a little bit, it was quite a sort of scary thing, the punk rock scene when it came out. I think it's, it might be a little bit easy to overlook just what kind of visual impact those people had on the era at the time. And I remember sort of visited, because we lived out in the sticks. I remember on a visit to Oxford and seeing a sort of congregation of punk rockers around Bond Square in Oxford, and it looked like a bunch of pirate outlaws or something.
Yes. Well, I
Uh,
suppose yes, I can relate to that because I was born in the middle of East Anglia, in a country, in the village, almost a field, so culturally things were quite behind. I mean, really behind the times culturally. So yes, punk definitely wasn't around, and it was more soft pop, the top of the pops experience, and also you obviously you have an older brother. I had an older brher as well. And he was really into the world of prog rock, so that was all that kind of.
Oh, really? Right.
Yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, Argos, and all those kind of classic records that everyone hated during the punk period, really. And elaborate sleeves and Rick Wakeman albums that came with little accessories like bits of foil that you had to look down to see some psychedelic kind of landscape that he.
Oh, wow.
Journey to the Center of the Earth, I think the album was. So it was all very, like, wow, this is great. But it was not punk, it was definitely, having people sort of on ice skates, and horses and, medieval knights. It was quite different. But your brother was obviously more into punk and heavy rock.
He was into Iron Maiden, I remember, and everyone was kind of big on the the imagery of the Iron Maiden, the Eddie the Monster and all of that. That was, and my brother kind of introduced me to Iron Maiden. Other than that, I don't think he was that into heavy rock, but he was more into the punk end of things. I remember him playing the Dead Kennedys. What was the name of the Dead Kennedys track that he played?
Too Drunk to.
It wasn't the Too Drunk to. It was California Uberalis. That was the one, and at that point, I just wow, this has got something.
So what was your moment where you either bought a record or you went to your first gig?
Record-wise, I received a record token one Christmas from my auntie Anne, and I think we went to Woolworths or something to spend the record token after Christmas. We were looking through the records, and my mum suggested Abbey Road. So Abbey Road was my first 12-inch vinyl.
Excellent. I'm sure your mum must have given you like, oh God, I haven't got that record. Go and buy it now. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Actually, my mum ended up getting rid of all of her vinyl records. It's quite a long story, but my stepfather bought a brand new stereo, Panasonic top of the range stereo, and he was like, "Oh, we're not going to play those old records on this kind of thing, on this stereo, it will spoil it." So somehow, I don't know where they went, but my mum ended up getting rid of all of her original 60s vinyl, and which was a shame. So there was a kind of a bit of a vacuum in that department. had to sort of go back and think the thing of Abbey Road definitely a step back at, to that world, because during that period we were probably listening to people like the Gibson Brothers, Cuba, and Rolls Royce, and more of the disco kind of disco and soul singers that were happening at the time, which was more an influence that my stepfather was probably bringing into the equation. Curtis Mayfield and the American black soul singers and Tamla Motown and all of that kind of stuff. Getting back to Abbey Road, that was the first album, and it was a little treat for us to play a record on a Sunday while we were kind of cleaning our shoes and getting ready for school the next day. And Abbey Road is a very melancholic album. It sounds like Because and stuff like that. And I just remember it used to spin me out into this ocean of melancholy, because you've got school the next day and you're doing these chores, and then there's these sad arpeggios of it's not you have got some more upbeat stuff on there, like Cascade and so forth, but that was my memory of Abbey Road. Obviously you've got Here Comes the Sun as well, a few vivid songs, but on the whole it's like quite a melancholic album, I think.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because I saw my parents bought one of these kind of compilations of the Carpenters, and that was kind of a massive influence, because all their songs are complete heartache and heartbreak, aren't they?
Yeah.
And about loneliness, alienation, and never finding a love or friendship. And I always thought, if you like the Carpenters and Burt Bacharach when you were young, you were definitely going to like Joy Division and the Smiths later on in life, because it's kind of like, I say goodbye to love, no one seems to care if I should live or die. And you think Ian Curtis.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty heavy sentiments. You don't really hear it around so much these days. Not that I'm too massively aware of what's happening on the radio, but it's not something that I tend to recognise.
No,
people pouring out their hearts on that. Harry Nilsson and Without You, obviously. Yes. That was a cover by the what was the band? The Can't Live Without You, the Welsh band.
Oh my God, I can't live. I can't. I know. I've just been.
So Badfinger.
That's the one. So God, that's the most tragic story of rock and roll.
Yes,
the story of Badfinger. Yes.
Yes. I mean, when you hear the story, it really kind of matches up with that song. It's
Yes, that's a track. I did an interview with Chris Spedding, who played on that track, and I said, when you recorded it, because one of those classics, did you think it was a great song? He said,
yeah,
you would never know, when you're doing those recordings, you think the songs that you think are great just disappear, and the songs you think, oh wow, that was a bit kind of classic. So it was quite interesting, really. There you go.
Incredible.
Yes,
and was he something to do with was he in Badfinger, or was he?
No, I think he was just one of the session guys who was just about Chris Spedding, because he did lots of stuff, and he's got an
I know the name, but
But then you had Seasons in the Sun, but you also had you had I Can't Live, but you also had Seasons in the Sun, which was another really sad song about, we had fun, we had joy, we had fun, we had seasons in the sun, and it's all about, basically dying at the end, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So no wonder we had such depressed people in older age. So there you go. All the 80s.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a kind of ethos, should we say, there's let me express your pain, your burden for you, so you don't have to carry it.
Yes, I know.
A little bit of that going on with good kind of heavy melancholic music. I think it kind of releases you.
I think romantic melancholia is the ideal emotional state to be in at all times, isn't it? Especially if you're an artist. I think that's where you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is quite a nice state of mind to get yourself into.
Yeah.
And you have to have a certain set of criteria in place for it to happen. You can't be sort of dashing around here, then, and the weather. Obviously, a bit of gloomy English weather is very synonymous with that kind of mindset,
Yes.
isn't it?
Well, in the good old days when we had heavy winters, that was definitely a period, wasn't it, between sort of October to March was kind of quite grim, really. You didn't see the sun. You just kind of had grayness, and just kind of endless winter days. Whereas now it seems a bit mild, really.
Yeah.
But then I remember doing a road trip in America once, and it was kind of through those deserts in New Mexico and Arizona, thinking, you really get the eagles when you're in that kind of landscape.
Absolutely.
You don't really want to, you don't, Joy Division, Smith's not really working. But
absolutely, yeah. Likewise, I remember when I went to LA and listening to the Doors in LA is a completely different experience. It's really is synonymous with that terrain.
Absolutely, yes. There's
and also I can remember when we toured in America, and we got hold of an early not demo tape, but a white label tape, whatever you want to call it, of the Nevermind, Nirvana's album. Right. And that seemed to really fit into landscape as well, this kind of alien force kind of rolling over this vast landscape, and as Kurt's voice and the sound of the band just matched up perfectly.
Yes, it's interesting. I'm sure someone's done a thesis, a PhD on the sort of, the relationship between art and the physical, the physicality of your, land around you. So, yes.
Well, it would be a good idea if they haven't. Very doable subject. Yeah,
we're all full of good ideas. So, what was your first gig you went to?
My first gig was, I think it was in Swindon, and it was a mod band called Small World.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you get to see them? My first band was 9 Below Zero. They weren't quite mod.
Oh, wow. You're joking.
But they were, they were at the Ipswich Gaumont. So I went to see them and was
amazing.
Amazed. Yeah,
I used to love 9 Below Zero. I had that live at the Marquee.
Yes.
I've still got it, and loved that. And actually, it was 530's. I think it was probably our second or third ever gig was supporting The Truth.
Oh, right.
In Oxford, which was quite an amazing experience after being so enamored by 9 Below Zero.
Yes, absolutely. So what was your small? Did you say Small World?
Yeah, a band called Small World, and then there was a local band from Swindon, local mod band, supporting them. I can't remember their name. I remember the bass player's name, Gary Palmer, but I can't remember the name of the band. And Small World, they were an East London band. And I think they were East London. I'm pretty sure they were from London anyway. And they were fantastic. My vivid memory of the night was their cover of Stiff Little Fingers, which isn't very mod, Tin Soldier, and what was the
HQ Park?
Fantastic. No, it was another fantastic cover that they did on the night. And what was it called? The Pressure of Knowing I'm being I know. And As I walk along, I wondered what went wrong. Another melancholic one. Love, I'm a wandering in the rain.
Right.
And it was Chris someone.
Well, I've got their Live in Japan album, which starts with "Do anything you want to do, good things in life today, no matter what." It does have "Tomorrow Never Comes," "Tin Soldier," "Peace of Mind."
Is that Small World?
Yeah.
They played in Japan.
Well, it says there was a live in Japan 2001. Oh, I don't know. I mean, perhaps it's
Okay, 2001. Wow. I mean, because this would have, when I saw them, I think they must have regrouped for that or something, because this must have been 1983 or something when I saw them in Swindon. And it was one of those. It was a fantastic gig. I think I remember we slept in the multi-story car park afterwards, and then hitchhiked, because we lived in a small town in the Cotswolds called Burford. I'm not sure if you've heard of Burford.
No, I've never been there.
Okay, they call it the gateway to the Cotswolds. It's situated approximately halfway between Oxford and Cheltenham, and so it was about a 24-mile hitch from Burford to Swindon. It's right on the A40 as well, so it's easy to get to London, and Oxford is the main city for London from there.
So look, interesting little bit of trivia, just to throw this in here. You know, Small World, they did a demo, which was obviously a demo.
Yeah.
But their first single, which is "Love Is Dead," which came out in
That's right, yeah.
Came out. Do you know what record label that was on?
No.
So that was on Wham Records with 2 A's, which was Dan Tracy's album. Dan Tracy, who did, Dan Tracy, the famous, and Edward Ball, who went on to do Creation Records. So that was.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So they were there.
Interesting little bit of trivia. Wow.
Yeah, so that was probably one of their first ever songs that came out on the label, because that was 81. So it's probably worth $5 on eBay now. So there you go. Well, could be 10.
Absolutely, yeah. "Love Is Dead" was the one. And can you remember the name of the person that the group that sang
"Walking in the Rain"? Yeah, I know the tune.
And I wonder, why wonder why.
Well, yeah, I know. Christ, we should.
Run away. That's what it's called.
Right. Yes,
Run
but
Away.
who's the band?
Who's the band? I'm going to have a look on the phone. Otherwise,
I'm going to look. Wait a minute.
Okay,
Run Away. Oh God, this is quality, interviewing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Run Away. Fuck, I don't know. Del Shannon.
There you go. Who another one like the Badfinger lot. I mean, he ended up taking his own life as well, I think.
It's a murky world, I tell you. Being a rock star musician comes with a health warning, doesn't it? Really. So there you go.
Yeah, maybe it does. But I can't say I've ever been a rock star, but I've probably.
So when you got to 16, did you leave school at this stage, or did you stay on for those?
Yeah, no, I left school at the first opportunity, much to my parents, more my mother. Wasn't a particularly popular decision, and it caused me quite a bit of trouble, actually, because it was simply a choice of if you don't go to college, you're out the door, because that's the way it is, or it was at the time.
Yes, that was heavy.
So I was out the door at a very young age.
Oh my God. So was that kind of 81, 82 time?
Yeah, I guess it would have been about, makes sense.
So what was your dream at that stage in life? Had you got the bass? Had you started playing?
Yeah, I mean, my dream, for example, the dream as you put it, was the band was born out of the dream. The band existed in name before I'd even had a chance to purchase a bass guitar. It was one of those ones. 530 is the band name from when I was about 13, you know. Before there was even the band, it was the name on the text schooled on the school textbook, you know. This is going to be my band and that's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
It wasn't really about I'm going to be a great musician it was really about I'm going to get a band together and the band's going to conquer the world or whatever.
Conquer some, yeah. Well, there you go. You've got to stick with the dream and hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when did you get the bass guitar? When did you think, actually, I've got the name, I've got the look?
Yeah. Well, I was doing my paper around and saving up my pennies on a weekly basis, and also bugging my parents. I think I was sort of one of these characters that get a little bit obsessive about things. Once you get that idea in your head, I could not stop thinking or talking about a bass guitar. I was driving everyone absolutely around the bend. So a bass guitar came up for sale through a mutual friend, and I think my mum kind of caved in and gave me the last sort of £20 or £30 that I needed to get it. It was an Earthwood. It was called, which is like a kind of Fender Precision copy.
Yeah.
Really heavy old thing. But that was the neck that did a figure eight, I think. The strings were so high, but that was the first bass, the Earthwood, yeah.
And did you
I would have been 15, 16, I think.
Yes. And did you have lessons, or did you have anybody giving you some help?
No lessons.
No lessons.
No, I didn't have any lessons at all. Probably accounted for my slow progress.
So when you went out the door,
most of the time was spent posing with the bass in front of the mirror for the first few years. I think.
That's understandable.
And jumping around to Clash records or something. Yeah.
And was there a particular, was it Sting, or was it Lemmy, or was it Chris Squire? Who was or John Entwistle?
Yeah. It was probably Bruce Foxton. Yeah. From a earlier age, I used to love the sound of the bass guitar on the Motown records, but I wasn't really of an advanced state of mind to actually realize what instrument it was. I just knew I loved that tone and what it was doing to me. And then later I figured out, that's a bass. That's what's happening in the music. There's someone doing that stuff separately, and he's called the bass player. And then when you kind of figuring it out a little bit, Foxton was probably the first, not probably, he was definitely the first bass player that I really got into.
Yes. And did you, were you obsessively going to gigs at this stage? Was that sort of your apprentice?
Because of where we were living, I think going to gigs was more of a treat, or luxury that we managed to do occasionally. We as many as possible. We would go to Oxford, the Apollo, to catch a few bands there. Lucky enough to see the Jam as well when I was 16. The year they broke, the year they broke up.
Yes.
That was probably my second gig actually after Small World. The Jam at Granby Hall. I think it was September of '82, and then we saw them in the December as well when they were playing the farewell tour. But trying to go to gigs as often as one could. We was in Big Country around that time, and the Cult. Yeah.
God, that's fantastic. Did you, when you went out the door at the age of 16, was it a bit like Huckleberry Finn, where you just kind of, or Jack Kerouac on the road? Did you just kind of think, right, that's it? Sorry, I'm going. How did you manage to navigate that?
What was the question? Sorry, Dave.
I just said, when you walked out the door at the age of 16, did you?
Oh, yeah.
How did you navigate that kind of period? Because
it wasn't so much as walking out the door. It was more, to be honest, it was more being. My brother and I both got kicked out the door. It was probably a sensitive issue, really. Not from my point of view, but I wouldn't like to upset my mother, really. Kind of,
no,
because everyone loves their mum, and my mum. She'd had a couple of children, i.e., my brother and myself, by the time she was 21, and she was a great mother. So I've got to put that out there first and foremost. So by the time we were teenagers, she was still a young person, really. Yes. And as you get older, you become more forgiving of your parents and what they have to go through. Nevertheless, we left home at that stage, and I went to live with my best mate. His name was Chris, who was a very big part of the band 530 for all kinds of reasons. And his father was a church minister. They lived in a village, probably 5 or 6 miles down the road, called Milton under Wychwood. Nice little Cotswold village, and they were just very beautiful and accommodating, and allowed me to stay on his floor for 6 months. And they had a basement as well, and they even let the band rehearse in the basement. And on top of that, when we ended up getting a new guitarist, a guy by the name of Shawn Gwin, who came over from New Orleans, America, he even stayed there as well for a few months. So, yeah, they were very, very sweet and accommodating.
My God, that sounds like some sort of beautiful hippie commune in Haight-Ashbury, actually, more than...
Yeah. In a way, but with minus the spliffs and it was they were very
the psychedelic drugs,
conservative. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, minus all of that.
It was exactly, and the tie-dye t-shirts, and
it was. It's most nice. His mother was lovely. We used to go around hitchhiking all over the place to these gigs and whatever, and get back at all times of night and morning. And his mum would get up and make us bacon and egg sandwiches. And sorry to the vegetarians out there, I paused before I said it. I don't know where you stand on that. Myself, as far as meat goes, I eat it very, very sparingly nowadays. I can't remember the last time I had a bacon sandwich, but
at 2 in the morning.
Yeah. And a bowl of Cocoa Pops as well to wash it down. So yeah.
Excellent. So lovely. When did you you had the name of the band obviously quite a bit before that? I mean, the early 80s, we had obviously, I know, the Thatcher got in, we had the Falkland War, we had the miners' strike, Greenham Common, we were all going to die in a nuclear war. And then AIDS. Sort of that AIDS, don't forget, throw that one in, and as well. And then suddenly, we had that post-punk world. There was the slightly new Paisley sound that was going on in London, which was all very beautiful, but I wasn't sure. And that mod revival. And then sort of 82, 83, the Smiths came along with their sound. So indie pop really felt like something was happening from 83 for the next 5 years with the Smiths. So what was it like for you then at that stage when you were looking at the band and thinking, what sound were you going for? Because you weren't sort of that that slightly abrasive sort of quality of bands like The Fall or Magazine or Gang of Four, were you? You were much more.
Yeah.
You had much
Well,
more.
at that stage, we were still. I mean, we were still very. We were kids, and we would play whatever came, whatever happened to come out at the time. We didn't have much control, musical control at that point of the game. And didn't really have a great deal of awareness of those bands either. I'd seen the Smiths on Top of the Pops, and I couldn't really get my head around. I was more into going back into the old 60s kind of bands at that age, I think, than the contemporary music scene that was going on. I've learned to appreciate them probably a little bit more with hindsight.
Yes.
Mm.
So what did you then stay in that kind of neighborhood, or did you, as a band, how did you start to evolve over the kind of 80s period? Because obviously,
Yeah.
there was a lot of different scenes. There was the sort of the Batcave and goth scene. There was psychobilly. There was indie pop. I mean,
Yeah.
the John Peel show was opening us up to all these amazing new records from around the world, which was mind blowing. We also had, 3 weekly music papers. There was lots of towns and cities had their alternative indie nights and such like. So how was your kind of 80s? Because you'd sort of formed in 84, hadn't you? And so had you stayed there, or did you move to London at this stage?
Didn't move to London for a little while. I think the next big move from Milton under Wychwood, actually, I moved back to Burford for a little while and ended up staying with my girlfriend at the time, also at a very young age, and then to Oxford. By this time, the American guitarist Shawn had done a bunk back to New Orleans. Went round to see him. He was living with my brother, where my brother had moved to. A friend of my brother's on the estate where we grew up. He was staying there after he'd stayed at our place in Milton and Wychwood for a while, and went round to see him one day, and he'd gone back to America without telling anyone. But he did leave his Vox AC30, which is quite nice. Yeah, the classic indie amp there. But
have you ever spoke to him since?
Yeah, we're in touch now. But we got obviously with the arrival of the internet and social media, we ended up hooking up. That would have been like 85, 95. 15, about 25 years later,
Right.
And he came over. He's been over to visit. He came and stayed with me like 25 years later, when I was living in Golders Green. And he's just made a record, actually. His name's Shawn Gwin, and I should tell you the name of his record. Let me just it's called Velvet Dreams, and it's Dr. Mary's Monkey. It's a good album if you get a chance.
Velvet Dreams, is it?
Yeah, it's new album he's just put out. But bless him, he left us in the lurch, and there was no internet, no telephone numbers. So, oh my Lord, that was quite an obstacle to get over at the time. But fortunately, we'd been into the studio and done some recording, and a very small independent label called Waterfall had offered to release a 12-inch vinyl, which has just been re-released, strangely enough, in the last month or two, which was called Catcher in the Rye. We recorded that, and he'd left us with just that little bit of a springboard. It was a nice recording, and that was just enough to get a guitarist, a player interested in joining, because we had a few gigs lined up, and a friend of mine, or friend, he was a little bit older, Paul Bassett, who went to the same school as I, but was much more advanced as a musician. My brother sent him a copy of the demo tape before it was released as vinyl, and said, we've got a bit of a situation as regards gigs coming up and no guitar player, but this is what we're doing now. Do you fancy it? And that's how Paul ended up coming into the fold.
Yes, God, that's already the murky world of being in a band, isn't it? Having to deal with those disappointments. Did you you question whether you were going to still stick with the band at that stage, or?
No, I didn't. No, but I just remember feeling gutted, really. I think, the day that I found out, because the night before I had been drinking with him in the local pub, the White Horse, and as he was walking up the hill, he turned around to me and said, "Hey, that the recording we did of Catcher, that was perfect," and I was heartwarmed by that comment, because he didn't give out the compliments too liberally, as it were. So I was feeling quite sort of chuffed about that. And when I went round, as I said, the next day, and Mike, my brother's friend's stepfather, said, "He's gone back home." And I just remember going back home, going back to my room and playing "Don't Let Me Down" by the Beatles about 10 times in a row.
So 20 years later, or a long time?
Or however long, probably, maybe more, yeah.
So when you spoke to him, did you say, what was that about? Did you?
It was a MySpace thing. I hunted him down on MySpace, and obviously, I think he was. Obviously is a word that I use far too often, because sometimes it's not always obvious. But I think he was aware that the band had continued without him and gone on to some degree of success without him, and was quite. I think he was quite a mixture of shocked and thrilled by that. But I just wrote to him a message on MySpace saying I would have been perfectly happy to hold on to your coattails and follow you down the road indefinitely, because he was a great player and a great songwriter as well.
Yes.
And but yeah, these things happen, and you have to try and do your best to find solutions. And fate takes its little part in the proceedings.
I know. Well, God, that's quite a moment, isn't it? So when, after Catcher came out, Catcher in the Rye, then what happens? Because that's kind of mid-85 at this stage.
Yeah.
And you get sort of Paul Bassett in to replace him. So then what's your next sort of phase of the band?
That kind of allowed us to play on what was the mod circuit at the time. But we were always considered to be second or third rate mod band by the people in the know, in the scene at the time.
Right.
I don't think we were never accepted into that clique. I remember when we played the Mod Aid All Dayer and they threw cheese sandwiches at us and and heckled us no end. Because I don't think we really, maybe it was the cut of the suit or whatever, we weren't really kind of well cut, clean cut enough to
pull it off. Who were the kind of A team, the A list at that stage?
Probably a band called The Moment would have been. Purple Hearts, maybe they'd. You see, the Purple Hearts had split and formed a band called The Rage, which was like a conglomerate of members from the Chords, the Purple Hearts, and probably some other mod bands as well. Yeah, good question. That's yeah, band called The Colours from Wales. The Truth, I guess.
Oh, they're so picky, aren't
Direct Hits.
they? Direct hits, yes. I
Yeah,
think
a few. Yeah, Squire. Those kind of people. Anthony Maynor from Squire. Yeah, it was. The names would start coming back if I. It's been a long time since I've thought about that lot.
Yes, that
Yeah.
lot, that bunch. Yes.
Yeah.
So then at this kind of period, sort of 87, say, the Smiths break up, Ecstasy comes along. There's a sort of new vibe in town.
Yeah.
New group of 16 to 18-year-olds.
87. Was Ecstasy around?
The Smiths broke up in 1987. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So then there's a kind of there's a bit of a new vibe in town, isn't there? It's all those indie bands that we loved, the jangly sound. Suddenly were getting a bit dated, weren't they? And then we had the dance scene, didn't we? With the Stone Roses and the Happy Mondays, and Sleep Dragons, and the rave culture and the Chicago house music. And then a few years later, we had the grunge scene. As you were there right at the start, though. I know Nirvana brought out Bleach in '89, hadn't they? And also the Pixies and Throwing Muses had sort of been around since 89 as well. So where are you at this point with the band?
Oh, right. Yeah. So before all of that happened, on like the Pixies and the Nirvana thing, we'd uprooted from Oxford and moved to London, Charlotte Street, number 68. That was probably about 88, I guess. And we were big time into. I was following Paul's lead more. Paul was a couple of years older than me and more progressive, sophisticated musician. So I tended to kind of just do what he was doing at that period. And he was a much more advanced musician than I was. And he was big time into Hendrix, but also the American funk and soul bands like Funkadelic and Parliament, and some of the Robert Cray, American blues artists of that period. So yeah, we were more into the American sort of dance and blues music than the indie thing that was going on in our own backyard at the time. That's I guess that's where we were.
Yes. So did you at this stage, because you get signed at some time in the sort of the change in the decade to East West Records, aren't you? So are you?
Correct.
Pardon?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. God, it sounded a bit like Mastermind there.
Started, so I finish.
So when did you? I know, correct. Magnus Magnuson. Air Conditioned Nightmare. So is this your first single for the band, for the label?
No, that was our second. First single was Abstain.
Right. So that comes out first, actually. So you'd sort of got your sound at this stage, hadn't you?
Oh, I wouldn't. I mean, we'd got the sound that had got us some attention and got us signed and got us on the road. But I think the sound was still in this. I think we were still trying to find ourselves musically at the time. I mean, we would go through different phases of of the band's what would you call it? I've derailed myself.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Were
wish
you
I'd.
were you just
Uh,
at that stage? Were you just kind of chasing a scene? Were you looking at what was popular and trying to sort of go, "Oh, let's."
no, I don't think so. Not really. Otherwise, we would have kind of gone down that shoegazy kind of route, which was kind of taking off. I just think that you're aware of what's happening. You're kind of you enjoy the bands that are happening at the moment, and you take aspects, or you're influenced by aspects of them, are filtered or shoehorned into your own development. So I don't think there was a specific. Let's sit down and try and resemble this, that, or the other. It was just a lot more casual than that, I think.
Yes, but then you had like bands like, was it the World of Twist, the Milltown Brothers, even Flowered Up,
Yeah,
1,000 Yard Stare. You slightly feel like you fit in a little bit with that company. That's there's that kind of, because you had shoegazing, but you also had quite a lot of other little
true.
bands who weren't quite who like the Sundays came along at that point where
Yeah,
they sounded great, but you kind of thought, oh yeah, that scene has been there. But I mean, obviously they become huge, but at the same time, you can sort of feel like they would have fitted in better in like during the mid 80s than that
yeah,
period,
yeah,
or a bit like a few years later in the sort of Britpop period. So I just wondered if you were
yeah,
fitting in, trying to sort of work out where you sort of fitted in. Because at that stage, you got management, hadn't you? Was it
yeah,
Pete
yeah.
Hawkins had started to manage
That's
you?
right. Yeah, yeah.
And what was that like? Were you being headhunted at that stage?
Yeah, yeah. By record companies, there was quite a big there was I guess there was quite a big response to the band, as far as the record companies and publishers went. It went a little bit crazy for a while, but musically, I think the Stone Roses did have quite an impact on us, because they'd obviously been listening to and had some of the same influences that we had, like the Parliament and Funkadelic. They'd been listening to American dance music, it sounded like
Yes.
to us. I mean, it from a slightly different angle, but yeah. As far as the industry side of the period went, yeah, it was before. I just remember a lot of knocking on doors and a lot of, no, he's not available, he's in the meeting, and not really hearing back from anyone, to mad few months when we were living in Camden, a place called Agar Grove, and there was a payphone in the hall, and it started ringing first thing in the morning and continued ringing all day, right until late at night. And it was just publishers and record companies and agents, and they were sending limos around to pick us up, and it just went crazy like that for a while.
What other labels were interested?
It came down to MCA, Island, and East West were the last three on the table that we'd whittled it down to. And then there was a bidding war between Island and East West Warners. At this point, Pete Hawkins had come onto the scene. We'd actually written to Pete a couple of years before, I think, while we were looking for a manager, sent him a demo and a photograph. So we had no commitments at the moment. Would he be interested? So he was one of the first people we spoke to, and he took the reins for the negotiations of the deals and so forth.
Yes, and there you go. And it was a happy marriage, I guess. Yes.
I don't. No, I wouldn't say that at all. I feel a little bit sorry for Pete in a way, because we fired him pretty quickly before the album came out. The first single, Abstain, did okay, sort of top 50, whatever. Air Conditioned Nightmare, there was a bit of friction between the record company and the band. They were heart set on releasing 13th Disciple and getting behind that, and we wanted to release Air Conditioned Nightmare, so they kind of pulled the rug a little bit, and I think we kind of Pete kind of got the brunt of that, maybe a little bit.
Right.
You're that age, you want everything. I think we were a bit impatient, really.
Because 91 is an intense year for you guys, isn't it? You know, this is like the singles are coming out. You're working with people like Flood as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Looking back on it, more events happening in the space of a couple of months than happened in space of years now. Yeah.
Yes, when you woke up on the 1st of January 1991, it was like you didn't know what was going to hit you, really, was it?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yes. So bringing the album out, can you remember the process and the experience of doing that?
Yeah. I felt that it was a little bit early for us to record the album. I would have liked another 12 months writing, demoing, and playing shows, and so yeah, I felt it was a bit early. We'd done a couple of 4-track EPs. We released about 8 songs already. We had a huge backlog, should I say, of demos from previous, before anybody was really interested in the band, before the EMI demo tapes, which garnered the main interest that propelled us into getting the record deal and so forth. So yes, we could have revisited that material, which I hadn't heard myself until recently, and someone, because they're going to re-release it, a new album out this year, and I hadn't heard it myself until someone sent this material to me, and there's some really strong stuff there, but that you just want to write new stuff all the time at that age, and I just felt that we needed another 12 months maybe playing and recording to actually hit the potential I thought we were capable of. But they had their diary mapped out, and we ended up going with the flow, I guess. And they put the studio in the studio just outside Wrexham in Wales.
Was that Rockfields?
Yeah. No, sorry, it wasn't Rockfield, but it was that kind of thing, that kind of studio. I wish it was Rockfield, but it was that kind of, I can't remember the name of the studio. Yeah. Charlatan had just recorded their first album there, Some Friendly. And that was booked for about a month or 2 months in the future, and we requested to Pete that we go away and hire a cottage somewhere and do some intensive writing and demoing, 3 of us. So which we did. I think we had a cottage for about a week, and then that was the pre-production session, basically. And then we were in the studio with Mark Waterman before we knew it, recording songs which would still in the process of being written on the whole.
Yes, God, it was an
so,
intense time, wasn't it? Very fast and furious. So how many days or weeks did you spend in the studio at that stage?
I seem to recall we were in the studio for, I think we were in there for the best part of a month. Yeah,
Yes.
full on lockout for the best part of a month.
My God.
Yeah.
And there are some classic songs in there, aren't there? I mean, it starts with Supernova. It's got 13.
Well, Supernova's a good example of what I'm talking about. I think it's a great song, but I never felt we'd done the song justice. And had we had time, just a little bit of time to go out on the road and play the song in a little bit, I think it would have been beneficial for the song in the long run. Yeah.
Yes. And what about 13th?
Yeah, that was a little bit more. That was pretty much we demoed that in the Island Studios when they'd given us studio time before, so that was a little bit more complete as a song.
Yes, I mean, and then you had Psycho Cupid as well.
Cupid, yeah, that was written in this ideas that there was. Paul had the idea, but it was again pretty much written in the studio. Psycho Cupid. Junk Mail was just a jam song that came out of the studio. Automatons was a very simple 2-chord idea that I'd had that came together in the studio as well. So
blimey, it's all go. So then what happens with the band once the album is kind of out and done? Do you then sort of tour it?
Yeah, we toured. We didn't tour Europe, but we toured around the UK and America. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long before Phil left after that. So it was very condensed period. A lot of events going on, good and bad. But Phil left when we were touring America.
Oh my God! During the actual tour.
Yeah, but it was more of we were playing, but it was more of a meet and greet tour.
Right.
Yeah. I think, it's you're young. I think Phil felt like he was getting the butt of the of maybe Paul and I were taking it out on him a little bit if we'd had a ropey show or something.
My God, that's so slightly Spinal Tap that you lose your drummer.
Yeah, it was absolutely a shame though, because it actually Phil he was a great drummer. It's a shame I couldn't see that then. And he was a good vocalist, great backing vocalist as well.
Yes.
He used to be a choir boy, and he somehow managed to retain his angelic falsetto, which featured very heavily on quite a few of those tracks.
Yes. So then when you got back from America, what was the sort of state of the band at this stage, apart from being a duo?
Drummerless. Yeah, I think really, in my mind, it was going to almost parody what Nirvana had been through. So, same time, they'd released one album, which was pretty good. Not earth-shatteringly incredible or anything. Just a good, solid record. And then they got a new drummer and released the next album, and then that's when it all came together. And I kind of felt that would be a similar route for us.
Yes. But then 92 came along. So did you ever sort of replace...
Annus horribilis, as the Queen said.
She did, didn't she? I know. She had a lot on that year, didn't she? So did you ever replace Phil at that stage, or did the band...
We attempted to. We had auditions, sort of a couple of dozen drummers came along. The guy that we really liked, his name was anyway, Jimmy. Was it Jimmy? He went off and he joined. He was from Leeds, and he was fantastic. I think we got a heart set on him, but he ended up joining this band from New York and went off there. So we had touring coming up for a tour booked in Japan, and we needed someone quick, and we ended up taking Jez, who went on to play for Swerve Driver.
Right.
For a while, he came in. He was okay. It was very different from Phil. Sort of, I think at that point we were beginning to appreciate that we'd lost a really good drummer. I remember.
Yes.
That's the way it goes.
So then you did Japan, and then was that the last gig you did as a band?
No, I think we did Japan, came back, we started demoing for the second album, ended up splitting with Jazz, and then Keith rejoined, who was the drummer in the band previous to... It is Spinal Tap now, I'm just hearing myself repeat it back. It's Keith came back. Keith McCubbin rejoined the band, so we've done a full circle. He wasn't the original drummer, he was the second drummer. And he was more like a prog rock kind of very muso drummer, and it didn't really happen with him.
Right. Did you start recording and demoing the second album?
Yeah, we did, but not with Keith, mainly with Jez, actually. And some of the demos were released on the Cherry Red record, a few of them, and I think we may release a few more. Heavy Soul are going to put out an album this year of our demos, so I think there will maybe some on there as well.
Yes. And there was what's this? The Aleister Crowley's Door.
The Door.
Yes, The Door.
Crowley Door. Well, what do you know about it?
Well, I just saw an interview of and a mention of it. Was this a album or a track that you had recorded?
We actually had, so it was claimed, as the Crowley's Front Door as artifact, which we put on the stage with us when we played live. It was quite a spectacle. This red door with the black lion's face for the knocker, and the small letterbox, which put a little lamp in the letterbox, and it was quite a spectacle. I think for the audience, created quite a atmosphere for we were on stage. But the story of the door. So there's a Yugoslavian guy by the name of Javon used to live below us, and he used to go around to all these car boot sales and house clearances and he had another friend called Lemmy. They were these hippie type guys used to go around on a motorbike and sidecar. And one day they pulled up and they just said, "Oh, Crowley's place was getting resurrected down at blah blah blah, maybe Gower Street or something. And we got the front door. We got the front door. We've got Alistair Crowley's front door." This is the same place that had the payphone in the hallway on Agar Grove in Camden, yeah.
Right.
And they put the door there by the payphone. And then Siobhan ended up leaving. So he disappeared, and Lemmy went to live in some squat, and the door just stayed there. You know, every time I went into my room, the door was there, and I'm like, "Well, why don't we take this door and put it on the stage with us?" It just it went from that's how simple it was, until the point that when we toured America, we even paid for the door to come out with us. You know? That is Spinal Tap.
And was it really Alistair Crowley's door?
Who knows?
Right.
But apparently, that's what Lemmy said.
That's always trust a hippie. That's
you
never, you know. They're good on yes. Well, there you go. Jeezy greasy. So there was so you wrote an EP or a track about this.
That's right. Yeah, we did. We were going to call the EP Alistair. That was going to be the next EP that we released before we split. And it was an awesome record. That was going to be the record that actually finally broke us into the big time. I am absolutely certain of it. There was some really good pop songs on that. That was going to would have given the Oasis such a kick up the arse before they even happened. It's a shame. Yeah. So the cover was all done. Chris, my friend, had done the cover of the record, which looked fantastic. He'd just taken the red door up to Hampstead Heath, and just had it like in the middle of the heath, all this green and blue sky, and a red door there. It looked fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, and you got to record the material, did you?
Up to demo stages, yeah, and we also met potential producers and played the material to them. And we were talking to Jimmy Miller at the time. We'd met him. We were talking to Tony Visconti as well, and they were all really, really into this material, and we were looking forward to. I was really looking forward to making that record, more so than any other record.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all looking good. And then what happens?
Well, so that would have been before we went to America. We had that. So Phil was drumming on those demos. So it would have been basically the Phil left. My friend Chris, who I've spoken so much of, right from when I was a teenager, who I lived with, he ended up killing himself. He jumped from Chelsea Bridge in March of '92.
Was that the family that you were living with?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So he was like my brother, you know. He did all of our artwork, all of our good artwork. The crappy album cover wasn't done by him, but he'd done another. I mean, this is Chris's. Yeah. I still have one of his paintings here.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Can you see that?
Yep.
I mean, that's one. Let's hold it up here. This was supposed to be our album cover.
Yes, God.
But for some reason, he didn't have it on time for the deadline or something.
Oh dear.
See, this is all textured. It's
it is three-dimensional, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've still got that. I might actually use it on this Heavy Soul record that's coming out this year, in honor of Chris at least.
Yes, well, absolutely. My God, that's horrendous. Yeah, so your 91 period was quite positive. Your 92 year was quite dark, wasn't it, really?
My God, you couldn't get more of a contrast. Yeah. A juxtaposition, if ever there was one. Polarization.
Yes.
Yeah, craziness. 91 was an awesome year. And you know what? People come into your life, and I don't blame anyone about the circumstances or any individual. It's just certain people, certain chemistries happen. You know, like, for example, I'm sure you can relate to this. You go out with one lady or you have one girlfriend, and for some reason, everything is really cool. Life is good, plain sailing. And then you have another girlfriend. It's not like she's a bad person or anything, but just like shit happens all the time. And that was 91 and 92. And I guess I'm using the analogy of girlfriends. It's because I had a girlfriend in 91 and loads of great things happened. And as soon as that relationship ended and I got into another relationship and loads of crap things happened. And I'm thinking, was it because of the chemistry of the relationship?
Yes.
These are the things that us songwriters have to mull over, you know, and try and figure out in our writing. Everyone has to mull over them, I guess, or doesn't have to. It's not compulsory, but
yes, well,
they intrigue me.
But it did, yeah. And the door, did you kind of look at the door occasionally thinking, perhaps I need to get rid of the door?
Good point. We did, yeah. Very astute comment. Yes, the door. We actually did some kind of ritualistic offering of the door. We put it on the Thames down by down on Hampton Court, and burnt it and put petrol and sent it like a Viking burial ship down the Thames and waved goodbye to the door.
My God, was that in 92? Was that 92?
That was 92, yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Did it feel like you had to do it? Was the door starting to be too much?
Very astute of you, yeah. I guess it was. But then you're thinking, or is it just us projecting? But all of this great, amazing stuff happened when we kind of took the door from the hallway and put it on stage. It's almost like the phone started ringing overnight. You know, the people, the bosses weren't in a meeting anymore. You know, so all of that kind of amazing stuff happened, and then the following year, like all of that dark stuff happened. Yeah.
Yeah, my God. So when did you decide the band was kind of all over at that, you know?
I never decided that. I would get the band back tomorrow. So
yes.
Yeah. That was a decision that was first Phil decided that he was going, and then after the emotion of 92, you know, especially with Chris in March, I think I spent 6 months kind of not knowing where I was coming or going. I'm sure I was absolutely awful person to be around. So much so that Paul decided he'd had enough the following September.
Yes.
So short and sweet.
Jesus, God, what a weird period, isn't it? You
It sounds like something from Netflix.
Yes, it's like, God, you know. Yeah, it'd be hard to write the one with it's hard to write that with the door, really, isn't it? But the door seems to be so symbolic to the band.
Do you write?
No, but there you go. But you know, but then, so what happens to you? You're sort of in London with no band.
At that point, at the point of having, are you talking post door or
post door, post door, post band, everything. Just sort of shattered dreams, really.
Yeah, and your best mate is also dead.
I know that's the hard one, because it wasn't just someone you were at school with, which is a bit odd. Which, you know, I had a friend who went in the army when he was about 25, and you know, I mean, it's a bizarre thing that happened, but I'd sort of lost touch with him a bit. But then he got shot the week before his wedding by his best man by accident, obviously.
Whoa.
And again, you're just thinking, God,
Wow.
Robert, that was Robert Riseborough. We used to sort of play football and table tennis all through our youth.
Was his friend best man who shot him?
Yes, I mean,
were they both in the army together? It was like a friendly fire.
Well, I think they were on manoeuvres. They were and he didn't have his gun latch on, and the gun went and it shot him. And it does seem, and I still, when I go back to the village, go to the cemetery to see various graves as you walk up the country lane, because it's countryside. And I always look at Robert's grave, and it's like, can you believe it? He got shot by accidentally by his best man the week before his wedding, and you're thinking, God, you can't make it up, can you? It's
no.
It's those stories that you just think, but that's a bit different, because I had slightly lost touch with him, and in a way we'd sort of we didn't have much in common, but you'd lived with this person and were still actively with him, seeing him in his adult life. So that's a different gig, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And there was loads of kind of weird stuff going on as well. Like I mentioned, I'd had a change in relationship, and I don't know if I was paranoid or something, but for a while I was convinced that he was in love with that person as well, and even it might have been reciprocal, because we were living in the same house in Hampton Court, big house on the river down there. Chris had a little studio in there for his artwork and stuff, and we were living in there. And so, a little bit like that hippie commune vibe that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
And this particular girlfriend of mine, she was only about 18 at the time. I was probably 22, 23. She had these, she'd let her hair go into dreadlocks kind of thing. And one day I came down the stairs into the front room, and Chris was sitting there unmatting her dreadlocks for her with oil. She'd obviously asked him to perform this chore for her. But I was probably a jealous young guy at the time, and as I came in, I was kind of quite stunned by the sight. And as he looked at me, his lip almost quivered like that. And I walked straight through the room to the kitchen, and then came straight through and went upstairs, and we didn't say anything else about it until we didn't say anything about that specific incident until I'm not sure if it was the same night or the next night or even the night after. We had the turntables in the living room, and we had a great record collection. And I just happened to play the Buzzcocks' "Ever Fallen in Love with Someone You Shouldn't Have."
Yes.
And it came to the end, and Chris looked at me and said, "Tara, have you ever fallen in love with someone you shouldn't have?" Just like that. And I was so stunned by this question that I couldn't even answer it. And I'm not even sure what I said now. But I just thought, he wants a conversation about something deeper, and I don't want to go there. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were all these unanswered things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what happened to that relationship?
Oh, she screwed me over, man. She was there just for the minor celebrity and the focus. I noticed she just tried to side up to everyone that was close to me and then push me out like this. I don't know what sort of girl, if you went to dinner with her, she would sit there and say absolutely nothing at all. You couldn't make a conversation with her. But I was in love with her.
Yes.
I don't know why. I didn't have any almost like I didn't have respect for her, but I was in love with her. A crazy thing. Maybe I'm damaged. I certainly was damaged after that. Anyway.
Yes, 22 is a tricky age, isn't it?
Yeah, and young girls are tricky creatures, very Machiavellian, some of them. Yeah, she went off to Jamaica and started seeing all these guys, and I still kind of took her back, you know. But anyway, it's gone now. She's gone as well.
Phew. Well, thank God you just, yes, let that one sail. So then, definitely 93. The band is totally over, isn't it? You wake up on the 1st of January, no band.
Yeah.
It's
Yes, that's right.
So how then what's your next phase here?
Well, from the Hampton Court days, after Chris's demise, I decided to go back to Oxford, get out of that house and all of the ghosts that were piling up. And so I went back to Oxford, Little Clarendon Street, and tried to start with the process of forming a new band. And first, that was it. First people I met there were the Jennifers.
Right.
And they left the Jennifers to join the band with myself, which we were going to do. But I didn't want to do that because I've been getting into the more. I'd just done 5:30 and I wanted to do something a bit more. I had quite a lot of anger and angst in me. I wanted to do something a bit more hard hitting. I was getting into Fugazi and a lot more of that American sort of punk stuff, and I wanted to go a bit more down that road.
So was this the Nubiles?
That's right. Yeah.
And you brought out Mind Blender.
Yeah.
But this was it. So you got signed a publishing deal with EMI at this stage.
Well, I retained the publishing deal from 5:30.
Right.
They kept me on, fortunately.
Yes.
For a while.
And did you at that stage you got a new
Chrysalis?
You got signed to Chrysalis?
Yeah, that album's not on Chrysalis, but we were signed to Chrysalis. But then Chrysalis went, it sort of went bankrupt for a while.
Yes. Where did you record? You recorded the album. Where was that recorded?
The Mind Blender.
Yes.
It was in a studio in Waterloo, on the Cut. Do you know the Cut in Waterloo?
No.
Okay. The Cut is, you know where the Old Vic is?
Yeah.
That's the Cut. That's the name of the road. There was a studio just down there on the right, underground studio. It's not there now. I can't recall the name of the studio. Chris would know.
Yes.
Sorry.
There you go.
Not that Chris. The other. There was a new Chris in the band.
Nettleton.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because you're at the height of the Britpop, John Major, New Labour period here.
Yeah.
Once that album came out, did you fold the band at this stage?
We see that album. That album was such a long-winded affair. We should have done an album in the first 6 months, 12 months of the band's formation, because the band was really kicking, and you're at that age as well where you connect quick if you're on a par musically with people and you gel with people, and we had a fantastic sound, but for some reason the process became drawn out, and that album wasn't really recorded until 4 years into the band's lifespan. So that by the time that album was released, Giorgio had left the band,
right.
Which is unfortunate. Have you managed to listen to that album at all?
Only bits of it. There's a thing. I Want to Be Your
Kinte Kinte.
Yes. Excellent song. Excellent
Sorry?
song. Excellent song. It's a good song, isn't it?
Ah, thanks. Well, that was I guess that was me shouting at the girl that went off to Jamaica. Probably wouldn't get away with this period of wokeism would probably get me hung, drawn, and quartered nowadays.
Yeah. So was this kind of your John Lennon sort of, primal scream experience, to kind of release the anger that you had that had been built up in the early 90s?
Yeah, quite a good way of putting it, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Always with a little bit of black humor thrown in. Oh, excuse the, but yeah.
I know. Just
Use the pun, yeah.
walking on a minefield here, aren't we now?
Yeah, yeah.
I did
Yeah.
once say to someone about black magic, and it was like, "Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't. Yeah, come on, I'll come. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you just realize you're on a new level. Anyway,
yeah,
so
especially
once that album came out, had you just had it by then?
The band again, Giorgio Cocchetti, lead guitarist of the band, he was first to go with 4-piece, but Giorgio kind of liked to complex character. He was always, I'm leaving in 6 months. I'm leaving this, and we just got back from a bit of a summer hiatus, and first meeting, it was normally about money and stuff like that. He kind of felt that he was Italian, and he felt like he was the outside, and he felt like we were all getting this money that he wasn't getting, and he wasn't appreciated for his genius in the way, and so he laid that one down again. I'm leaving, and I'm like, Giorgio, just go or stay. We had a TV appearance booked for that very day on a Welsh comedy show where we were going to be doing Kunta Kinte, actually.
Yes.
And the kind of shit hit the fan on that day, and I'm like, I want you to stay in the band, but please, you either stay or go. Don't say I'm staying until 6 months, then I'm leaving. And then we had a silly little group vote, and he got voted out. And then we're silly things, really, because now I've learned you should always do your very, very best to preserve a special chemistry, and it was very unique special chemistry. I loved the New Bells, like, in a way, more than 5:30. That was supposed to be my forever band,
Yes.
I really, I'm learning now. I've kind of learned a hell of a lot from human relations and through the 5:30 experience, and I'm going to kind of use all of that for the New Bars and just plod along making records and playing. And unfortunately, it wasn't to be.
Yes. God, that's so tricky. So then, that's kind of gone. What's your next musical chapter after that one?
Oh, the Wilderness chapter.
The Wilderness Years.
Yeah.
I did an interview with there was a poet, wasn't there? Murray Lachlan Young. I don't know if you can remember. He got this kind of £1 million deal with EMI, and it was kind of like a bizarre period in his life, and then it all goes terribly wrong, and he just kind of ends up with nothing. And after that year, that period of real sort of heightened kind of excitement and money and fame, it all just disappears really instantly. And I did an interview with him a few years ago, and he said that it just completely screws your head up, and he just went and lived in a wood for sort of a couple of years, built himself a bar, and just went into the wood until he was kind of fit enough to come back out again.
Off grid.
Yes, it was just like everything had mucked with his brain. So did your Wilderness period, was that kind of you having to find out who you were again and navigate out of that?
I kind of, my experience was a little bit similar to, what's his name, Murray
Murray Lackland Young. He, yes, the
Right,
poet.
yeah. He's a poet, yeah?
Yes. So he used to, you'll like his work, actually, he says, optimistically. I should have his book here. But he used to tour with various bands. He was very flamboyant and extrovert. And
Okay.
and he did one on Britpop, bizarrely, a poem on Britpop, which I can't now see. Anyway, I should have rehearsed this, shouldn't I? And then you would have gone, God, he's so efficient.
Yeah, no, I would love to check his work out.
Yeah, he's a delightful guy because he obviously had to go through what a lot of people went through of dealing with what happens when it's all over and sort of eating humble pie and getting back into reality.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, there's definitely some loud munching of apple humble pie, should I say, going on in my world.
Oh, this is it. This is the guy. Look,
Oh wow,
Murray
cool. How
Lackland Young.
stupid like guys are you?
Yeah, so
right.
he did this one. If you read his story, it's kind of, he gets this £1 million, you're going to be the best thing ever. Then the record label, personnel change, he gets kind of ceremoniously dropped.
Yeah.
And then, he then has, and also, fame has completely mangled his brains. So there you go.
Yeah.
So then with the Wilderness Years.
Yes.
So
I dealt with mine in the way he went to the woods. I went to Japan. I had a few London wilderness years. I was still writing. I think I've picked up the guitar every single day of my life, I think, providing there's been one in the room or accessible. So yeah, I've always kept that up and always enjoyed sort of doing that, sort of rather than watching telly or something. But then I think it would have been early 2000, about 2000. I went to Japan. I went out there and ended up teaching English. It's like a bit of a graveyard for for English musicians. Is Japan, who can kind of make a living by virtue of the fact that they can talk English. Yeah. So
yes, I know there's quite a few who've done the teaching English as a foreign language.
Yeah, that was me.
Mega City 4. I remember his.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think he went to Australia. I know he couldn't have done Australia. Okay. I can't remember, but there's a lot.
Was it Wiz or Wiz the singer?
No, unfortunately, Wiz was the guy who died. It was his brother. Right. The brother was the one who. He had the wilderness years of just. Yeah. I mean, everyone has that period, though, isn't it? You've done nothing else apart from playing music.
Yes.
And you knew what you were going to do. Your next period. You're recording, you're touring, you're recording, you're touring. This group of people, and then when it's all over, and there's no money, you've had to get rid of all your musical instruments, and you've got no identity, and no one cares about you.
Yes.
It's kind of done, isn't it? And then people can. And then people can come up to you, random strangers can come up and say, "Weren't you somebody in the 90s?" And you go, I'm still a somebody now, but I was big. I was big in the 90s. I've shrunk now to the size of a tiny person." You just stand on me and insult my face. So yes. So then when did you, after those years in Japan, when did you find yourself playing music again?
Oh, well, like I say, I've never really stopped playing for my own personal enjoyment or writing. I had 2 stints in Japan, actually. So I went out there at the first time and ended up getting married to a Japanese girl, and we came back to London for a while. We had a bit more tragedy. We lost a child, and the relationship also folded. That was another weird one as well, because she was like the daughter of this guy who owned her father owned a huge Japanese company. It was like a health food company. It was one of the biggest, probably the biggest health food company in Asia. So suddenly I was propelled into this world of huge wealth, which was an experience as well. They weren't extravagant, don't get me wrong. It wasn't just like wanton kind of wasteful kind of wealth, but yeah.
Yes.
But it was it offered me the opportunity to not have to quit the job and to do a bit more traveling and focus on my writing, things like that. But it was a window of time, and that's gone now. Now I'm back in this other reality. The easy days are in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, but I enjoyed them while they were there. It was on the back of someone else's labours, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yes. And that's so. Yes. So then this latest chapter. So music back in the UK.
Yeah, so like I said, we had two stints in Japan. Went to Japan, did the English teacher thing, met the wife, came back here. There's another 3 or 4 years, lost the kid, and want to go back to Japan. Father bought us a house, it was very nice, but went back to, got another job after a couple of years, again teaching English, but more as on a conversational level. They have conversation schools. You literally get paid to facilitate conversation.
Right.
Sounds good, but it's actually very tiring. If you imagine 90 minutes of someone that can speak pidgin English, it's quite exhausting.
I would imagine it would yes, the novelty would wear off, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then the relationship ended, and then I came back alone to the UK, back to the world of bedsits and doing blue collar work. Like I'm a bus driver now. So, but I managed to record an album amongst all of that, and hopefully do some more recording this year.
So is this the debut album, the Serpent Waltz?
Serpentine Waltz.
Serpentine
That's
Waltz.
correct.
That's the one that came out last year.
Yeah.
And so have you been with your back catalogue? Has that all been getting archived with all the 530?
Yeah, there are a few people out there that have fortunately kept on top of that side. Yeah, it's pretty much been archived.
Yes, Cherry Red Records brought up.
Yeah, they did a bit of a bodge, unfortunately. I wasn't very happy with that. The packaging was great and all of that, but they managed to mess up some of the like run-ins and stuff like that. Things which were one song, they've ended up becoming 2 songs. If you get what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, weird. We've got a few complaints. Yeah, butchered it a little bit. Butchered some of the record. There you go.
But is all the material that you did with the band, is that kind of now available, or is there more?
No, like I say, there's still a lot of material that has not been heard. And I hadn't even been heard from me until a couple of weeks ago. And I was playing, I said, this is really good, actually. It wasn't the material that we broke through with, maybe it just happened to be that that wasn't the in vogue sound at the time of.
Yes.
But had it been a different time, the material was strong enough to stand up in its own right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to putting it out.
Fantastic. So
Yeah.
then, yeah. So you got your solo stuff, got this archiving, and do you play any more live dates, or have you just sort of?
I'm trying to ease my way back into it. I had a few bad experiences whereby the stage fright got the better of me. You see, my mainstay as a musician, as you're aware, has always been as a bass player in the band on the stage, and then I did the transition to 6-string guitar, and not the strumming variety, but the sort of more the finger style
Yes.
elements of playing. Do you play guitar, Dave?
No, I don't, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you can imagine it's a lot less forgiving if you're a little bit nervous on the bass guitar. Maybe your hand's going to it's forgiven, you can get by. But if you're doing an intricate finger picking style and your hands shake even a little bit off, it's very difficult. And I literally was so nervous I couldn't even play. So I'm trying to ease my way back into what I know I'm capable of in the privacy of my own room. Doing it in front of an audience. I think it will get there. But as I said, this band that I was sort of playing with today, it's a different. I don't have that worry. I'm just there as a someone to help facilitate the songs, bass guitar. It's a band called Stash the Roller, and it's more of a soundscape kind of spiritualized groove, very
Right.
simple. Yeah, that the drummer is more in control of the sound, and I'm just there really to kind of take the elements of the sound and the beats and channel them into give them a bit of form and a bit of dimension in the form of song. That's my key role there, which is
Yes.
really fun.
Excellent.
Mm,
That would be good. That would be good. I mean,
that's nice. Yeah,
that
I'm
must be quite a
grateful.
nice feeling. I mean, if you could have whispered something to your like 16-year-old self starting now, is there anything in particular that you would have said, oh yes, I would have definitely told them that?
Oh, to myself as a 16-year-old.
Yes.
Oh, question. What about anything in particular?
Well, I just wondered if there would be like, oh yeah, God, if I had met that my 16-year-old self starting out, I would
Yes.
have just said, look, kid, you
Yes.
might ignore,
Yes.
you might ignore this, but I'll just tell you
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
or, just a bit of
Yeah.
directional advice.
Yeah. I would. Yeah. I would definitely say don't rush. That's what they always tell us as bus drivers. You
Don't
have
rush.
accidents when you rush. I thought I was in a race to. I really bought into that whole punk ethos of, the Paul Weller thing of you've got to do it by the time you're 21 kind of thing is like really only relevant. Then I would say be thorough, take your time, um, live life and live it thoroughly. Channel that into your music and take your time to develop as a musician and don't rush yourself.
Yes. God, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a tough gig though, isn't it, really? Just getting it right. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it is.
And
Yeah.
did you, I guess you did, make up with your mum in the end?
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
That was
Um,
those
Probably,
relationships.
I think maybe 6 months later, something.
Right.
I didn't speak to her for about 6 months, but since then, we've had a pretty consistent relationship. She's still the number one lady in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your mum is
Your
always
mum
there.
is your mum, isn't it? And as I was saying earlier, as the older you get, the more forgiving you become of your parents when you have the contrast of the way you've conducted your life.
Yes, I know.
Terribly.
Yeah, you realise it's a tough gig getting older, don't
Yeah.
you? You think, Jesus Christ, that's hard work.
Yeah.
But look, this has been amazing. Well, thank you ever so much for your time and amazing story. I mean, I'm really curious with the Alistair Crowley story.
Everyone is quite fascinated by that little anecdote. Yeah.
Yes, she's got it bad. Yes, that is a good one. But it's so did those tracks, I might have missed it. Did you say you'd recorded them or were recording them?
Yeah, no, I think we have recorded them. I think the tracks were going to be "She's Got It Bad," which we've got a pretty good demo of. I think that was actually on the Cherry Red record. Barbie Ferrari, and then we were going to put, because it was going to be a 4-track, and we were also going to put, what was it? "Song of No Intention."
Right.
Like a Beatlesy kind of song, and "When I'm Stoned," which is like more of an instrumental with a brief vocal interlude.
Yes. Well, you'll have
That
to
was going to be a killer EP.
so close. Jesus, so close. Anyway, you'll have to listen to
Yeah. Who would have known? I mean, who would had that happened? I may not be sitting here to tell the story. I could be another Kurt or something. Not that I'm claiming to have his kind of talent, but
it could have blown you, couldn't it? Anyway, but you can always have a listen to your version of what was the track you had on Alvin Lived in the
"My Sweet Lord."
My Sweet Lord, and also Lush with Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep.
Got to do that. Yeah. I'm going to reinvestigate that album.
Yeah,
I've got the image of the boot and the blue cover.
Yes.
Now. Yeah.
It was quite psychedelic, actually. Glam-tastic. It was glam-tastic. But right, look, we need to go to bed, don't we? Not together, but
well, yeah, only single bed to me. So thanks, Dave. It's been so nice, and I've really enjoyed
look, take care, and I can always send you the link if you want to.
Absolutely, yeah. I want to go back. I will actually go and have a listen to some of your older shows now.
Yes,
I'm not going to copy other people's answers.
Oh yeah, and if you've got any band you think, you should try and get them.
Definitely.
Give us a shout. Yeah, it's always good.
I will do.
Anyway, look, have a great day tomorrow, and good luck with the new band as well.
Thank you. I keep in touch.
I will. Take care.
Yeah.
See you later.
All the best.
Yeah, let's hope this year is good for you.
Yeah. And for you too.
See you later.
Yeah. Stay lucky. Bye-bye.
Yeah, stay lucky. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview. A massive thank you, as always, to Tara Milton from 530 and the Nubiles, and also his latest band. This has been the C86 Show, David Eastaugh. So if you want to contact me, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just do C86 Show. All these interviews have been archived. Aren't you lucky? You can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Anyway, have a great week. Stay safe.